The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Well, good morning, CHD. Welcome. We're recording this back from the CHD conference. I want to thank everybody who was able to come out to the conference and was able to join us online. We appreciate you so much. I met so many very, very gracious people that were, the support is just absolutely overwhelming. So we love our supporters. We love our viewers. We love our fans of CHD online, and seeing them in person is a super, super treat. Today, we have another treat. Our good friend, Dr. Nancy Tarlow, is joining us. Nancy, as I said, when we were talking before we hit record, you look just super. So
Thank you.
whatever you're doing, you got to keep doing it. And you're in your new digs down in Florida. So good. How have you been? And tell us what we're going to be talking about today. You always have so many good things in your bag of tricks.
Thank you, Brian, for having me on. It's so much fun doing this podcast with you, so I appreciate it. So life has been a little stressful the last couple years. As you know, I've been dealing with a ongoing hip thing and trying to find the pieces of the puzzle and trying to get to the root cause is much harder when you're doing it for yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And it's much easier to have someone else be able to take a look back and find all the pieces. I just haven't been able to find the right person. So I've been piecing it together by myself, and I'm doing a lot better. And, being in a warmer climate, especially this time of the year, doesn't hurt. Being near the ocean is really nice. I am a water person, and I love the fact that I can just 5 minutes away and I am at the beach. So it's important to find what works for you. It's
Right.
important to find, like, I love the beach. I know people that hate the beach. They'd rather be in the mountains. So it's that's, to me, one of the things that has really come very much in my present mind. The forefront is, how can we help people find what works for them, and
Right.
how can we find simple solutions to help people get healthier? So, that's where I'm coming from, because, there's a lot of expensive things out there. If you were to look at all the biohackers, you'd have your own sauna, you'd have your own red light therapy bed, and the list, and a ton of supplements. But, supplements don't work with everybody.
Right.
And red light therapy is great, but how many of these extra items can you buy without going broke? So the purpose of the talk today is to teach people very simple things they can do. And yes, you can always go deeper, but start simple.
Exactly. I really appreciate that, because so many individuals are cash strapped, and coming on the heels of coming back from the conference, there are a lot of really, really good people that it would be great if you could just buy everything. But there are some simple steps that you can take just with your own lifestyle. I mean, getting out and getting some sunlight every day. There are so many people, I'm a computer nerd. And so there's so many of us that kind of have this pasty white appearance because we're not outside. We're not doing that. And, so I love the fact that you talk about the outdoors, getting near water. I mean, if water's your thing, if the mountains are your thing, if the desert's your thing, and if that's not your thing, make it your thing, because you do need to get outside.
Yeah, and also along that note is, not only do you feel good by in a place that you love, you release endorphins, which are very important for healing. If you like to go hiking, take a moment to hug a tree and start grounding. All those things don't cost any money. You
Right.
could do those things. You could just go outside and you could start feeling better right away. rather than just thinking, oh, I really need to buy this new device. And I have to tell you, I am as guilty of buying these toys as anybody, but
Yeah.
how many do I really use? I
Mhm.
only use a couple. And I actually started selling a lot of the ones I had bought because I wasn't using them and they were sitting here.
No, no, I get it. I mean, my family could open a used supplement store for all the things that I, buy. And we're gonna try this, and we do stage them in, but if they don't work, then they don't work, and then, but they, you can't resell them. Sorry.
Yeah.
But well, tell us more. Get us into your presentation, and let's talk about chronic health issues, which so many of us have.
Well, we know that chronic health issues are affecting about 60% of the population. I wanted to focus on that rather than acute problems because most acute problems will go away. But it's the chronic health problems I want to focus on. And I'm all about, I'm all about root cause. What is the root cause? Well, in this day and age, it could be like five different things, or
Right.
the thing that was the initial root cause could be overtaken by toxins in our environment, the stress that we're living in. So it's harder to figure out what is that initial stressor that caused it. But even if you figure that out, you still have to deal with all those other layers. And, the other thing I want to point out is how we are unique. We are different. Like, Brian, if you were having sleep problems, what caused your sleep problems very well could be different than what causes mine.
Absolutely.
Or let's say we're having problems detoxifying. There could be a genetic component. We may be exposed to different toxins. So, what is it about you that makes it different for you than somebody else? And one of the things I like people to do is to start think about taking notes. Think about what was the initial thing that you feel started the problem. If you could go back, if you could take a time machine, when was it that you started feeling bad and what were you doing at the time? Because the onset is really one of the key pieces to getting to the root cause. But just also understand that, we have different diets also. So, I eat organic almost all the time, except if I go out, which is rare. But even organic isn't really totally organic anymore, especially when you consider that appeal coating that is on some vegetables, and that even organic wheat is sprayed with glyphosate. So again, the more you know, the better off. But also try not to get overwhelmed. So what this is about is I'm going to teach you some things you can do that are easy, you can get started with today, but also realize that healing takes time. I actually did this infographic a couple weeks ago about this camel and like what was the straw that broke your back, right? That was the saying that was popular when we were younger. What's the straw that broke the back? And there's so many pieces to that. So we're going to start talking about that today. I put poor water quality and not enough as the number one thing. Think about it. We have a high percentage of water in our body. We want to realize that if you're drinking tap water and you're living in a place that's fluoride or other chemicals in the water, that's a little bit of toxins or poisons that are going into your body.
And if you don't know whether they're adding fluoride to your water, your municipal water, and you're drinking filtered municipal water, find out, because
Yes.
you do not want that in there. And you also want to lobby your community to take it out. I'm
Right.
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so what I suggest is, yeah, definitely go to your township. They have a report for what's in the water. They test
Right.
it pretty regularly. You can find out. I could tell you, even if there's no fluoride, I bet you there's a ton of other stuff in there. If you can afford a whole house water filter, get it. If you can't, at least get something for your tap. So, especially if you live in an apartment, you're not going to invest in a whole apartment water filter, but you could get something for your tap water, or like go to Whole Foods or something and buy the 5-gallon jug.
Right.
Stress is important because if we're under stress, then that affects how we detoxify. and how well our like GI systems working and our heart and our lungs. So stress is a really major cause of chronic health problems, which then will affect how the nervous system is being regulated. Dysregulation is a big buzzword, but a lot of people don't know what that means. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Lack of movement, we were just talking about how important it is. If you can't, hike, maybe you could go for a walk. Maybe you can walk in a pool. There's something hopefully that you can do. They sell these little bike things you can pedal while you're sitting. So
Right.
if you're bound to a chair and you really can't get out, even just moving your arms and doing some lifts will help the lymphatics. I think, one of the things that is foremost in my mind is this problem that we're having with the lack of community connection.
Hmm.
I think that with, the divisiveness and, politically or just about any topic, it's like people seem like they want to fight all the time. And I've never seen anything like this. I'm going to be 67 next month. I never remember anything as toxic as what I see now. And I think that toxicity is affecting people's health. I think that people badgering each other, especially if you're on social media, it affects you. You may say, "Oh, I'm not going to let it affect me," but it does, and then causes ruminating thoughts, and that's that fight or flight response.
Exactly. Find your tribe. We need to be in community. It is important that you learn to get along. It's important that you have more and more people skills. And I think that's becoming more of a lost art. I'm fortunate to be a part of a really, really good church community and, my work community. I have friends that I work with that I'm able to get together with outside of work. You really have to brainstorm to not be isolated. And I think that was one of the tactics of COVID that they were really successful with, was isolating people.
Right, right, and also creating that division too. Right. So COVID, I think, was the major turning point. But I also think some of these elections, have been very divisive in that, if you voted for one person, maybe, people would look down on you for voting for that. And it happens on both sides.
Right.
So I think that, I'd almost like to move that up to number one as working with trying to like reconnect with people that maybe whose relationships you've lost. Some are going to be impossible. There are some people that I was friendly with that were just so far extreme and belittled me, and I'd have a hard time repairing that. But if they came forward and said, "Look, I was wrong, I'm sorry," I would definitely want to reconnect, it depending upon how mean they were.
Right. Right.
EMFs, I feel like they're kind of like the silent killer because you can't see them. Um, I can feel them when I go to a hotel. I really have a problem sleeping because of all the EMF in the
Hmm.
hotel. I'm living in a single family home. Like being in an apartment would be very difficult for me. I know Bobby Kennedy Jr. talked about like the whole cell phone thing causing cancer in the brain, tumors on the same side that the person was holding their cell phone up to. So that was the EMF that was going directly into the brain. And then the other thing is Lyme and mold. It's an area that I personally don't know a lot about as far as guiding people with that. There are tests you can do. There's great remedies, but I have suffered really debilitating illnesses from both Lyme and mold. So I know that this is a big deal and it's something that, the medical community, medical doctors aren't familiar. And I'm using that as a stereotypical thing, but I'd say most doctors are not familiar with what to do with Lyme or mold, or even to be able to detect it as a cause. Our body is 50 to 60% water. So every cell in our body needs water. Our brain needs water. Every part of our body, every organ needs water. So if we're not drinking enough water, we're dehydrated. And think about it. I think that if you're drinking coffee in the morning, 1 or 2 cups a day, That could be water that you're drinking. So you're already maybe behind what you should be drinking. And then if you're drinking soda, even like a Zevia, that's still water you're not drinking, or tea. So it's important to get about 50% of your body weight in ounces of water every day. Um, Water is essential for detoxification. That's why I have this as number one. If you start drinking more water and it's clean, I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing your body detoxify just from that. So, the majority of lymphatics is, I think it's like 94% is comprised of water. If you're not drinking enough water, you might be constipated, you may not be urinating enough, and you may not be sweating enough. So you're not going to be able to get rid of those toxins that build up in your body. And then, the other thing that I learned years ago was about Dr. Emoto. He did this study about how our thoughts will affect the water. So he actually did this study where he had people like looking at a jar of water and only thinking loving thoughts. And then he had other people looking at water and thinking about like Hitler and like really evil in this world. And then he took the water, he froze it, looked at it under slides. And the people that thought about love and compassion and gratitude had these beautiful, like it was gorgeous, the beautiful white. And the people that were thinking negatively, it was gray and dark. And how does that affect your body if you're thinking positively or negatively when you're drinking your water? Or I think even when you're eating your food, try to think about something positive.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, people might think, "Oh, that's out there. That's a little woo-woo." No, we do that all the time. I mean, we've had instances in my house where we run out of like a homeopathic remedy, and our practitioners basically said, "Okay, take some water, write out on a piece of paper the homeopathic remedy, sit it there for 15 minutes, and then use that as your homeopathic remedy, and have like my son drink the water." I mean,
Right.
there are frequencies there that, will absorb. It sounds so weird, but for us, it's worked.
Yeah, and frequencies, that's like a whole separate conversation in itself. But just briefly, frequencies are energy. And let's, one of the examples I like to use is your cell phone knows how to find another cell phone using
Mhm.
frequencies, right? So why not use that same thought pattern to improve the quality of your food or your water or even yourself? Think positive thoughts about yourself.
Exactly. And that travels through space because it's an electrical signal. Electrical signals affect electrical fields and magnetic fields. And so it is absolutely real.
I've actually sent frequencies to people all the way across the country, and I don't know if they believed it or not, but they would report feeling better. So, was it the placebo effect? I don't really care as long as people are feeling better. So, I'm not going to debate whether it works. All I know is you can try it and see if you notice a difference just by thinking positive thoughts before you're drinking your water, for instance. So one of the major stressors, I mean, all these things are important, but environmental toxins. And again, we already talked about water, vaccines. If you doubt that there's toxins in vaccines, please go online and read the ingredient list and then look it up. I'm not going to spoon feed this to you. I want you to look up the ingredients, and I want you to take those ingredients lists and take it to the EPA website and see what the EPA has to say about those ingredients. Then I want you to ask yourself, well, if I were to eat those things, those toxic ingredients, what's the effect going to be versus injecting them into your body where they go into the bloodstream? So that's why that is so important. And so the mRNA COVID shot, there are lots of doctors that work in oncology that have seen a huge spike in turbo cancers where the person was fine. And then a few months later, they're gone because of these turbo cancers. Dr. Paul Marek and Dr. Guillory, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name
Yeah,
right.
Dr. Gilroy. Yeah.
Yeah, they've both seen this in their clinics. They both have seen this. Dr. America is also primarily a specialist in cancer. Other doctors have talked about this too. Those are the two most prominent ones. The latter I saw speak at the CHD conference I watched online, and he had all these statistics to back it up. And Dr. Marek, I follow him on X, so I see what he's posting about all these turbo cancers. Food that has a residue of pesticides or herbicides. Again, those are toxic ingredients. The pesticides are the point of them is to kill bugs that are eating your food, right? So yes, there's small amounts that you're getting, but look at a cumulative effect of
Absolutely. I mean,
of
there's so many organophosphates in pesticides, to kill these bugs that are basically neurologically active. And so any type of residue, then, you're putting your stress on your central and peripheral nervous system by getting them.
And we know that herbicides like glyphosate are destroying the
Mhm.
gut, which is essential for our immune system to work. When you have an inflamed gut, it can then affect the brain because we got this gut brain connection. Maybe alone that these issues wouldn't be as big of a deal. But when you think of all these things you're getting exposed to, bombarded with on a regular basis, think about, again, it's a cumulative effect. And
Right.
for vaccines, they're being injected. If you're eating stuff that's got toxins, hopefully your liver can help clean. That's the goal of the liver, is their purpose is to help clean your body from toxins. But if you haven't done a detox program and all those toxins are just sitting in your liver, or if you don't have good bowel movements and you're not eliminating properly, these
Mm.
things become a problem. So, and I really am not here to scare you. I'm here to bring awareness and information so that you can make better food choices. If you can afford to eat organic, please do. If you can't, there are products out there that will reduce some of that residue, and I don't use that, so I can't. I just buy all organic, but I
Right.
know that you can find that. Air pollution, right? Look up in the sky. Today I have a beautiful blue sky. Yesterday I had all these lines crisscrossing my sky. There are things called geoengineering, chemtrails. I can't tell you off the top of my head what the ingredients or what the components are, but I know for a fact they're very toxic. And it's important to really, even if you don't believe it, right? Even if you don't believe in chemtrails, because there are people that do not believe in them. Do you want to have a blue sky where you're getting the impact of the sun on your body and getting that vitamin D? Or do you want it to be, so many lines in the sky that the sun isn't penetrating? Yeah.
Exactly, and there's aluminum in chemtrails. There's aluminum in the particles that are released. I've had friends that have worked and actually gone and done sampling and found the aluminum in that. That is a neurotoxin. It does not belong, it's being inhaled. And it's a real thing. So what do? You find out where it's being sprayed. There's a site called Geoengineering Watch. You can find out more about that. You can also make sure that you're detoxing heavy metals on a regular basis.
Along that line, so in Florida, they're banned, but we're
Oh,
still
good.
getting the chemtrails because it's a federal program. So the best way to tackle this is to write I guess your senators, and apparently it's coming from the Department of War. It was,
Mhm.
previously the Department of Defense, that they are actually behind all this spraying. So my suggestion is, yeah, definitely say something to your local legislator, but you need to go up to the next level. This needs to be stopped on a federal level because we don't really know the actual effect of being sprayed. We don't know, is it getting into our food? It probably is, right? So even organic food isn't really organic anymore. So my goal by talking to you about this is that you get involved locally in politics, but also send those emails to your senators and people in Congress.
Absolutely.
So we briefly talked about EMF. I know that years ago there was an elementary school where they put up a cell phone tower on the edge of the property of where the school was. And the kids in those classrooms, there was actually a significantly high number of kids in that classroom that got cancer. So enough that they were able to get that cell phone tower taken down. Now, I've also seen pictures of trees next to 5G towers, and the side that's up closest to the tower is dying. There
Right.
is no doubt that the EMFs that are bombarding us through our phones and the cell phone towers and the other 5G towers, they're affecting us on a cellular level. So again, this is a great place. There are things that you can do to block that EMF. So we talked a little bit about stress and negativity. There's a couple great people to follow are Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, and Dr. Bush, Zach Bush. They all talk about, there's been multiple studies done of people who think negatively and how it's affected their health. And just by thinking positively, they've been able to turn their health around. Joe Dispenza actually talks about this. He actually took it to the next level because he went from saying, you have to think positively. He's now talking about you have to feel the feeling of what it's like to be healthy. Is it that you're playing tennis again? Are you able to do things? What is it that's going to spark your cells to get turned on again to help the healing process? But if you follow these people, they will show you studies that have been done. And it's not just, again, like one of those woo-woo things. I think that social media and TV are like the worst things that we have in our life today. I am on social media, but I literally block anyone who's toxic. I want some information, but I don't want to be bombarded with toxic thoughts. I have unfriended good friends who were out there being toxic. I don't want that. So
No.
think about how that's affecting you. Are you engaging? Are you allowing yourself to get upset? The TV, of course, they want you to watch the news, and they know that you're more likely to watch the news if there's a disaster or something negative. Then, they've done all this, psychological testing. They know you're not going to turn it on for a feel-good story. But
Right.
they know you're going to turn it on, for some catastrophe, whether it's made up or not. So be aware that they are manipulating you because they benefit. They're getting ad revenue the more that people are watching their programs. They've put together movies that are very fear-based too. So, think about that when you're watching a movie. Are they manipulating me? Probably.
Right.
Financial issues are a huge problem. People being stuck in that fight or flight, going back to that social media, we get in these ruminating thoughts. And again, the lack of community cohesiveness.
I mean, it's such good information, and it's very user friendly. It's hands on at things people can do. So I think they need part 2 episode of Dr. Nancy Tarlow, talking about these foundational issues. So now you have to come back. Where can people find you?
They can find me at blueprinttoheal1@gmail.com if they want to email me. Blueprinttoheal.com. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Blueprint to Heal. I have a YouTube channel called Blueprint to Heal. I'm passionate about this. This is my soul's purpose, is to get people to learn how to take better care of themselves, to be empowered, and as simply as possible, whenever possible, but they need some hand holding. I'm there for that too. I do individual coaching as well as group coaching. So, this is how I want to move forward to help people in our communities.
And it's such a great service, and you've done so much wonderful work over your career. We can't thank you enough. Stay tuned for part 2 of Dr. Nancy Tarlow, Blueprint to Heal, and you all have a great Friday.
Okay, we are live, so if you can tell everyone your name, please.
Teresa Hobbs.
And this is a story about your husband.
Michael.
Can I show them a picture
Yes,
of Michael?
certainly.
There he is. Now, did Michael take the COVID-19 shot?
He did not.
Why did he not?
We just had enough information to know that it was still experimental and that it didn't make sense. He's not, we neither one were anti-vax or anything like that. He did 30 years in the Navy, so he was used to having people pump stuff into his arms. I had never had the flu shots or pneumonia or anything, but he did take those.
He did?
Every year on the advice of his doctor, yes.
But this time he decided no.
No.
He's not going to take the cut.
No.
Okay.
The whole thing just didn't make sense.
So you have a timeline there. Do you want to talk through what happened? So how he ended even up in hospital?
I'm the one that gave it to him.
What?
I caught it first, the COVID. And I got it in a Navy pharmacy, sitting amongst vaxxed, masked people for 45 minutes. I know that's where I got it because that was the only place I was with anybody around people for that week. But we had gone over to come to this side of the state, the east side of the state, for a school reunion. And I woke up Saturday morning with a little bit of a sore throat and a raging headache. So rather than expose other people, we didn't want to take a chance. So we drove home to the west side of the state and quarantined ourselves. I called my doctor. They refused to give us anything at all, any early therapeutics. I asked specifically for ivermectin and or hydroxychloroquine. And the response was, oh, we don't do that. So we stayed home and got through it. We used what cold medicines we had at the house, and we got through it. And then on day 10, we were referred to a telehealth provider in Houston. So we did a consult with him. He saw that we were dehydrated, and he tracked down the monoclonal antibodies for us at our local hospital. So we both had monoclonal antibodies, and then a few days later, about day 13, 14, Mike was just not right.
After taking the monoclonal antibodies?
Right. We chalked it up at first to dehydration. We were both dehydrated. And later I started thinking maybe it was he was not getting oxygen to his brain. Our perfusion was good. Our O2 sats were up in the low 90s, high 80s. I don't think they ever got that lower than that. But he was a little bit spacey, so the telehealth provider said send him to the hospital for fluids and he'll be fine. So the first thing they did at the hospital was give him a PCR test and tell him that he was still had active COVID, he was still contagious, and put him on the protocol.
So did he have remdesivir?
He did. When he got, our local hospital didn't have room for him, so they called around and found a room at the University of Washington.
I mean, you were not allowed to be with him?
No.
So how
Absolutely
were you
not.
communicating?
He took his phone with him. It was almost dead. Nobody would charge it, but I managed to get through to him, or he called me. I tried to call him. That's kind of odd. The paramedic put his phone in his right pocket when they took him out, and he's left-handed. So when I tried to call him, he couldn't find his phone to answer it. But later he managed to call me to tell me that they had done the PCR, they told him he was still contagious, they'd done an x-ray, they told him he had COVID pneumonia, and that they were going to life flight him to somewhere else. And then later on, a nurse called me to tell me that they'd found a room for him at the University of Washington Hospital Northwest, and that he would be life flighted as soon as they could get him there.
Did they know he was unvaccinated or did not take the COVID shot?
I believe they knew it because when we went in for the monoclonal antibodies, they were asking, and they were pushing the shot then.
What, so they wanted him to actually have the COVID shot while he had COVID and was sick?
No, they wanted him to wait a few weeks.
Okay.
They wanted me to wait a few weeks, but they pushed it for both of us. Told us that we would never get COVID again if we had this shot. So it's like natural immunity doesn't exist anymore.
So he's life flighted to this other
He was
hospital.
life flighted to University of Washington. I believe they're the ones that put him on remdesivir. There was no informed consent. He was unconscious. When he managed to call me himself before the nurse called to let me know that he was on his way, he told me that they were going to intubate him for the flight. He had a choice. He could sign a DNR or he could be vented.
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't, but they said those were his choices. So he reluctantly, and that's in his medical records, the doctor put in there that he reluctantly agreed to be put on a vent, to be intubated. So we both thought it was for the flight, that he would be extubated when he got there. Didn't happen. They called me. The pharmacy called me to confirm the meds that he had been on, and then another doctor called me to get permission to put in a line in his neck for medication. And then they put him on remdesivir. I didn't know about it until the next day, but he was unconscious. They could not get him to be awake long enough to have a conversation, so I know he had not given consent to that. I didn't know much about remdesivir at the time. I did some quick research and decided that was not something I wanted to take a chance with. So I spent the next 5 days trying to get 3 different doctors to take him off the remdesivir and try something else, and they all refused. They all claimed that it was the protocol, it was the only thing that worked, it was the only thing that was approved by the FDA. And at the time, I was 90 miles away.
Oh.
I could barely walk across the living room myself by this time.
So how long was he in that state?
1 week. Took 1 week. His liver? No. I guess his kidneys. His kidneys were fine when he went in, but it took about 48 hours for his kidneys to start to fail. His labs were coming back weird, and I don't know enough about him to really know. I know that now, looking at the labs and at the autopsy results, that they were lying to me on the phone. I could call the nurse's station a couple of times a day, and then a doctor would call me back sometime during the day, maybe, or in the evening.
Were you with him when he died?
I was. The day before he died, the doctor called me to apologize because they'd allowed one of his, the epinephrine bag to run out, a drip. And because he was in the hot zone and it took him so long to get prepared with PPE, he was without the epinephrine for I don't know how long, but when they got the fresh bag up, his heart stopped. So they did CPR on him. I found out later with the autopsy that at that time they had broken several ribs and lacerated his liver. So essentially he bled to death over the next several hours. My kids came and got me and drove me to the hospital. That was a 2.5 hour drive. And when I got there, they forced us all to suit up and these with oxygen and the whole bit. They still had him in a room with what was it, contained air, the filters and everything. It was crazy. So they let us in for a little while. They wouldn't allow us to stay for very long. We left. We got a hotel room, and about 4:30, 5 o'clock the next morning, we got another call from the hospital that they had him on 3 blood pressure meds, and his blood pressure was still dropping. They knew he was gone, and I should get to the hospital right then. So I did, and so we were with him. I was with him when he drew his last breath. It was about an hour after I got to the hospital.
Well,
So, and I found out with the autopsy, which came several months later.
is this the autopsy here?
Yes, there are 3 of them there. The initial
Can I open it?
Sure. The initial report, the final report, and then the neuro autopsy of his brain.
So it says enclosed final copy of the autopsy report.
I've made some notations on one of them. There's a
Yeah.
And they had him on the usual stuff, the propofol, the Presidex, they had him on morphine and fentanyl. One of the doctors told me they'd put him on fentanyl. They kept trying to take him off the ventilator, supposedly, and they'd give him this little test. He'd be anxious or agitated, so they'd stop. Just decided it wasn't time to take him off yet, which didn't make sense to me. When somebody's messing around with a tube down your throat, you're going to be agitated.
So what was his cause of death?
Multiple organ failures, the first listed cause of death.
Let's have a look at this. This is his death certificate. Multi-system organ failure is number A, cause of death. B is mixed distributive and septic shock. C, acute respiratory distress syndrome. And D, COVID-19 pneumonia.
And it says in his chart notes that it probably wasn't pneumonia, that the doctor figured it was a pulmonary embolism that they were seeing on the x-ray when they...
It says other conditions contributing to the death: probable ventilator associated pneumonia, deep venous thrombosis with multifocal, and it goes on, pulmonary embolism, artery disease, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and on it goes. How old was he? 77?
He was 77. Very active,
Well,
very... He did have the type 2 diabetes. It was under control with actually a pretty low dose of metformin, and we had been adjusting our diet and so forth. So my goal was to get him off the metformin altogether, but...
It's a terrible shock for you and the children.
Yes.
How are you all doing now?
Okay. It was, the first year was rough. The second year was almost rougher. But we're okay. They're still doing this. That's my reason for being here. Nothing is going to bring him back, but they're still doing this to people. And I know that they're going to do it again with whatever excuse they can come up with.
So you want to warn the people?
I do.
Thank you for sitting here and talking about it. It's barbaric what they did to him. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.